The phone rang at exactly 10:47 p.m. on a miserable, rain-soaked Thursday. I remember the precise time because I just checked the battered analog clock hanging beside my back door. My right knee, a souvenir from a bullet I took in '98, had been throbbing like a bad tooth ever since the barometer plummeted that afternoon. Sleep wasn't on the agenda. Instead, I'd carried a steaming mug of black coffee onto the porch, listening to the relentless drumming of rain against the corrugated metal roof. The porch light cast a pale, defiant circle against the encroaching darkness. I almost let the call go to voicemail. My daughter, Emily, was 34 and hardly ever called this late, unless it was a pocket dial. But some ingrained instinct, a remnant of my 31 years as a United States Marshal, made me pick it up. At first, there was only the sound of ragged, panicked breathing. Then a trembling whisper, "Dad." Every hair on the back of my neck snapped to attention. "I left him," she choked out. I didn't speak immediately in my line of work, and in 3 decades of raising a daughter alone after my wife Margaret passed, I'd learned that silence is often the best oxygen for someone drowning in panic. Then, a violent sound shattered the quiet, a heavy, resounding bang. Someone was pounding relentlessly on a hollow core door. "Emily," I said, my voice dropping an octave, slipping effortlessly into a tone I hadn't used since I interrogated cartel lieutenants. "Where are you?" "I'm locked in the bathroom at the pilot station on Highway 321, she sobbed, her voice barely audible over the thumping. "He's right outside." Another savage bang rattled the speaker. "Emily, come on, stop being so dramatic," a muffled man's voice shouted through the door. Trevor. I had only met the man a handful of times, but my gut had instantly pegged him as a polished snake. His smiles were too perfect, too rehearsed, like a predator wearing a human suit. "Dad," she whispered, a desperate plea hanging in the air. "I don't know what to do. Is the door deadbolted?" "Yes." Good. Another sickening slam echoed through the phone. "Listen to me very carefully. Keep your phone pressed tight against your ear. Do not hang up, okay?" She shuddered. Drawing a jagged breath, outside the bathroom, Trevor's tone shifted seamlessly from rage to a sickeningly sweet croon. "Emily, sweetheart, you're embarrassing yourself. People are staring." Silence from Emily. "I know you're in there," Trevor continued softly. A beat of silence, then he chuckled. "We'll laugh about this tomorrow, babe." I closed my eyes, my jaw clenching so hard my teeth ground together. That wasn't the chuckle of a man trying to de-escalate a lover's quarrel. That was the hollow, arrogant laugh of a man who firmly believed he owned the narrative. "I know exactly where you are," I told her, grabbing my truck keys from the entry table and stepping out into the biting rain. "I'm on my way. What if he breaks the door down?" "He won't. You don't know that." "I do know that," I said, my voice cutting through her panic like a scalpel. Cowards like Trevor thrived in isolation. They despised an audience. A brightly lit gas station wasn't his preferred stage for violence. Stay put. My old Toyota Tacoma had pushing 200,000 miles on the odometer. The windshield wipers squealed in protest, and the heater was temperamental at best, but the engine roared to life with reliable ferocity. As I threw it into reverse, my eyes caught the empty rocking chair beside mine on the porch. The porch light remained on. It had stayed illuminated every single night since Margaret died 6 years ago. She used to say, "Leave it burning, Ray. You never know who might need to find their way home in the dark." I pushed the accelerator to the floorboard, the tires spinning briefly in the slick mud before biting into the asphalt. Emily stayed on the line the entire drive. For miles, neither of us said a word. The silence was punctuated only by the rhythmic swish of my wipers and the ominous pacing of Trevor's boots outside the gas station bathroom. Occasionally, he'd tap on the door, whispering apologies, promising the world. Then, frustrated by her silence, his footsteps would retreat, only to storm back a minute later. "He keeps saying he's sorry," she whispered, her voice fragile. "Do you believe him?" I asked flatly. She hesitated, then let out a broken sigh. "No, then don't open that door. I should have left him months ago. You should have left the first time he made you afraid." It was a harsh truth, but this wasn't the time to sugarcoat reality. A heavy silence fell over the line. "I know," she murmured. 27 agonizing minutes later, I whipped the Tacoma into the glaring fluorescent lights of the gas station lot. The rain had dialed back to a persistent drizzle, coating the pavement in a greasy sheen. Trevor was standing outside the main entrance, his hands buried deep in the pockets of an expensive trench coat. He looked exactly like the kind of man who weaponized his appearance to manipulate strangers. Impeccable haircut, tailored clothes, a relaxed, easygoing posture. When he spotted my battered truck, his face broke into a wide, practiced smile. I killed the engine and stepped out into the rain. My bad knee screamed in protest as my boots hit the concrete, but I locked the joint and walked toward him with a slow, measured stride. Growing older teaches a man how to conceal his pain from predators looking for a weak spot. "Mr. Carter!" Trevor called out, stepping forward with his hand extended. I didn't utter a single syllable. I didn't break eye contact. I just kept walking. He lowered his hand. Stopping a few feet away, his smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. "I really appreciate you coming all this way. This is, honestly, just a massive misunderstanding between Emily and me." I stopped in front of him. I was 2 inches taller and 40 pounds heavier, carrying the dense muscle of a man who had spent his life wrestling fugitives to the dirt. I looked past him, locking my eyes on the illuminated hallway leading to the restrooms. Then slowly I brought my gaze back to his. Not anymore. His jaw tightened, the facade cracked, revealing the ugly, controlling machinery churning beneath. "Sir, couples argue. It's normal. Sometimes people overreact. If you could just talk some sense into her." "No," he blinked, taken aback. "No. No." For 10 suffocating seconds, neither of us moved. The world continued turning around us. A rig driver fueled up his diesel tank, ignoring the tension thick enough to slice with a combat knife. A tired mother hurried past us, clutching a toddler. Ordinary life kept humming along, completely blind to the fact that my daughter's world had been systematically dismantled by the man standing in front of me. Trevor leaned in closer, dropping his voice into a conspiratorial whisper. "I love your daughter, Ray." I stared right through him, my expression carved from stone. "Then why is she hiding behind a locked steel door?" He didn't have an answer. Instead, his lips curled into a smirk, a cold, dismissive sneer that told me everything I needed to know. It was the look of a man categorizing me as a harmless, overprotective old fool. "I think you're misunderstanding the dynamic here," he said smoothly. "I don't misunderstand a damn thing." Behind him, the restroom door finally creaked open. Emily stepped out into the harsh light. She looked utterly drained. Mascara cut dark rivers down her pale cheeks. She was clutching nothing but her purse. For a heart-wrenching second, she looked exactly like the terrified 7-year-old girl who used to wander into my bedroom after a nightmare. The moment she saw me, the fragile dam she'd built completely collapsed. She practically ran across the slick tile, throwing her arms around my neck. "I'm so sorry." She wept into my shoulder. I wrapped my arms around her, forming a physical shield between her and the world. "You have absolutely nothing to apologize for." Trevor took a step forward. Emily, she flinched, violently. That single, involuntary spasm of terror told me more about what went on behind closed doors than 1,000 police reports ever could. My blood turned to ice. I smoothly pivoted, placing myself squarely between my daughter and her tormentor. Trevor stopped dead in his tracks. His face remained pleasantly neutral, but his eyes were black, lifeless pits of rage. "You're going to regret this," he whispered, pitching his voice so only I could hear. He tried to make it sound like a tragic warning, but the venom, laced through every syllable, was unmistakable. "It's not too late to walk away, old man." I didn't dignify the threat with a response. I turned my back on him, the ultimate insult to a narcissist, and opened the passenger door of my truck. "Get in, sweetheart." Emily scrambled inside and locked the door without looking back. Trevor didn't scream. He didn't pound on the glass. He just stood there in the pouring rain, watching us pull away, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. It was a chilling display of control. He was calculating his next move. The drive back to my property was suffocatingly quiet. Halfway home, Emily finally broke the silence. "I really thought I could fix him," she whispered to the foggy window. "You can't fix a man who doesn't believe he's broken," I replied, keeping my eyes on the slick road. "I didn't tell you what was happening, because I was so embarrassed." She let out a dry, humorless laugh. "I thought you'd think I was weak." I reached across the center console and firmly squeezed her trembling hand. You survived, you made it out. That requires strength. The rest of it, we'll deal with it. As my Tacoma crunched onto the gravel of my driveway, the porch light shone through the relentless rain like a beacon. Emily let out a shaky breath, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. Mom always made sure that light was on. Always, I agreed. The moment her boots hit the wooden planks of the porch, her cell phone vibrated violently. A new text message, unknown number. Before I could warn her, she tapped the screen. She froze, the blood draining completely from her face. I gently pried the phone from her rigid fingers. I stared at the glowing text on the screen. You just signed your family's death warrant. For several long seconds, I didn't move. I simply stood there, letting the cold rain blow in sideways across the porch, staring at the threat. Then, I looked up at the light Margaret had sworn me to keep burning. Somewhere out in the dark, Trevor Malloy firmly believed that fear was his weapon, his domain. He believed he was dealing with a frail, retired handyman, an old widower he could easily bulldoze. He had just made a fatal mistake. He didn't know he had just picked a fight with a man who had hunted monsters for a living. And the old marshal was wide awake. By morning, the rain blew east, leaving the yard smelling of damp clay. Emily slept fitfully. I didn't sleep at all. Old habits don't retire when you hand in your badge. I sat at the kitchen table with my reading glasses low, her phone beside my coffee, documenting every detail on a legal pad. At 6:15, Emily shuffled in wearing Margaret's oversized sweatshirt. She sat across from me, the heavy silence broken only by a mockingbird outside. "You're writing it down," she murmured. "Yes," she rubbed her temples. "Dad, I don't want this to become some explosive thing." I took off my glasses. "Sweetheart, a man sent you a death threat, I know," she whispered, shame settling over her like a suffocating blanket. "But he didn't start out like this. They never do." Emily traced the rim of her cup. "At first he was incredible, sweeter than anyone. He made me feel entirely seen. Then he convinced me my friends were toxic, my colleagues disrespectful. Eventually, he demanded all my passwords." She gave a bitter laugh. "I teach high school kids about unhealthy relationships, and I missed every red flag." "You didn't miss them," I corrected. "He moved the boundary line 1 millimeter at a time." "He monitored my bank accounts," she cried, tears spilling over. "He'd ask why I spent $12 at Panera. If I didn't answer during a staff meeting, he'd accuse me of cheating. He gaslighted me until I thought I was crazy, telling me I was dramatic and that you had spoiled me." My knuckles turned white around my mug. "I know exactly how men like Trevor operate." She frowned. "Dad, I know you were in courthouse security, but I was a U.S. Marshal for 31 years. I stated, dropping the fatherly tone for the steel of my rank. The kitchen went dead quiet. She stared at me. "You never told me. Your mother knew I hunted fugitives. Killers. I refused to let that rot sit at our dinner table." I took a breath. "Men like Trevor aren't looking for love. They're looking for absolute ownership." Her phone buzzed violently. An image loaded the parking lot at her high school. The caption read, "Pretty easy place to find." Panic seized her. "I can't go to work." "You will," I said, standing up. "But today we go on the offensive." By 9 o'clock, Deputy Aaron Pike stood in my driveway. I'd known Aaron since he was a rookie. Now, he possessed the exhausted patience of a seasoned deputy. He scrolled through Emily's phone. "I'm taking this seriously, Ray," he said, "but I'm not cutting corners for you. I'd kick your ass if you did." Aaron turned to Emily. "Save everything, don't respond. If he shows up, dial 911 immediately." He glanced at my property line. "You running surveillance?" "Not enough, well." Aaron sighed. "Today's a good day to upgrade." By noon, my brother Cal arrived with his toolbox, followed by Denise Walker, our retired 911 dispatcher neighbor. For the next 4 hours, they transformed my quiet yard. Cal mounted high-definition cameras, while Denise synced feeds to eliminate blind spots. I walked the perimeter, analyzing the terrain with a hunter's eye. "Do you really think he'll come here?" Emily asked, hugging herself. "I think he wants you to believe he can," I replied. The next morning before sunrise, I stepped onto the porch and spotted a glint of silver on the top step. My stomach plummeted. It was the delicate silver chain I'd given Emily for graduation. The clasp was violently snapped. Trevor had been here while we slept, bypassing the perimeter to leave a physical threat. A predator testing the boundary. I closed my fist around the broken chain. "Denies," I called out. Heading inside, pull up the footage. The crisp night vision video showed a dark sedan crawling past at 2:13 a.m. A figure in a black hoodie walked up my driveway, placed the necklace on the porch, and stared directly into the camera lens for 10 agonizing seconds. A silent dare. "That's not a man trying to win his girl back," Cal grunted. "No," I whispered. "That's a man establishing dominance. He wants her paralyzed by fear." The paper trail began. I bypassed Google, digging into public records, court filings, and dismissed civil complaints. At 11:40 a.m., I struck gold. Marissa Cole, a dismissed petition for a protective order in Sevierville from 4 years ago. Trevor Malloy had lived 2 streets over at the time. Denise worked her back channels, finding a cell phone number for Marissa's cleaning business. I carefully texted her, explaining the situation and promising not to harass her. Minutes later, she replied, "Meet tomorrow, Smoky Mountain Diner, 10 a.m., bring another woman." The diner was a grease-stained relic. Marissa arrived late, a slender woman scanning the room like a soldier in a minefield. When she sat across from us and saw Emily, her defensive posture melted into profound recognition. "Did he take your phone away yet?" Marissa asked flatly. Emily swallowed hard. "He tried," Marissa nodded. "He's intoxicating at first, then slowly he isolates you, tells you your family is toxic." She laid out Trevor's blueprint. He secretly recorded their arguments, goading her into screaming, then edited the audio to sound calm while she sounded hysterical. He posted the clips, ruining her reputation. "I filed for protection," Marissa said, her voice shaking. "Then I dropped it. Why?" Emily asked softly. "He sent me a picture of my dog sleeping in my fenced backyard. Then, a picture of my elderly mother walking into her church." Marissa grabbed Emily's trembling hand. "You need to hear this. You are not crazy." Emily broke down sobbing. I stared out the diner window, the analytical part of my brain locking into gear. Trevor wasn't just a violent boyfriend. He was a systematic destroyer of lives. He was building a narrative that Emily was unstable, and I was a dangerous, overbearing father. He wanted a confrontation. He wanted a reaction he could capture on camera. Fine, I thought. A cold smile touching my lips. Let's give him a show. That evening, the harassment escalated exactly as I anticipated. At dusk, a dark sedan rolled slowly past my property. The driver killed the headlights, except for a high-beam spotlight that violently swept across the front of my house, lingering on Emily's bedroom window for 5 agonizing seconds before speeding off. I stood in the unlit living room, gripping the sofa. Every primitive instinct screamed at me to kick the front door open and let the bastard see exactly what kind of violence an old marshal was still capable of inflicting. But Trevor wanted a reaction. He wanted a frantic, angry father charging his car, a 10-second clip of a deranged lunatic to post online and flip the narrative. So I stayed in the shadows, swallowed 2 Advil, and waited. At 11:18 p.m., a video message lit up Emily's phone. It was footage of her weeping outside her school earlier that week. The caption read, "She's falling apart without me. I'm coming to bring her home tomorrow." Emily stared at the screen, her eyes wide with terror. I looked at the bright porch light. "Good," I said coldly. "Tomorrow he can meet the welcoming committee." The following evening, I lit the property up like a prison yard. Every floodlight and motion sensor blazed, flooding the driveway in unforgiving, shadowless white light. I wasn't making a statement. I was ensuring every high-definition lens Cal had installed captured the upcoming theater in perfect clarity. Cal hauled 2 heavy lawn chairs onto the porch. "You know," he said, popping a diet soda. I figured. Retirement excitement meant finding discounted motor oil. "Life rarely consults our plans, Cal." Across the street, Denise openly adjusted her porch camera. If Trevor Malloy wanted an audience, he was getting front-row spectators. Emily stepped outside, clutching a tray of iced tea, her posture haunted. "You don't have to stay out here, sweetheart," I told her. She shook her head stubbornly. "I've spent 2 years hiding. I'm not hiding tonight." At 7:42 p.m., Deputy Aaron Pike's cruiser rolled quietly down the block. He parked half a block away, close enough to respond in seconds, but far enough that no defense attorney could claim police intimidation. Aaron strolled up the driveway, thumbs hooked in his duty belt. "You expecting company, Ray?" he asked, eyeing the setup. "I am." Aaron turned to Emily. "If he steps on this property after being asked to leave, state your refusal loudly. Do not touch him. Let the cameras work." She nodded numbly. The neighborhood settled into the deceivingly peaceful hum of a suburban evening. At 8:16 p.m., headlights slashed through the dusk. A dark sedan idled in front of my driveway for 30 agonizing seconds. A psychological tactic to make the prey sweat. Finally, Trevor Malloy stepped out. Dressed crisply, he wore that infuriating, tranquilized smile. His phone was raised, the red recording light blinking. He was live streaming, "Evening, folks." Trevor called out. The silence from the porch was deafening. He walked up the driveway, panning the phone. "Emily, sweetheart. I just came by to talk." He stopped at the bottom steps, centering me in the frame. "Look at this," he narrated to his invisible audience. Her father actually organized a neighborhood ambush. Cal raised a hand lazily. "Son, I've had a double knee replacement that terrified me more than you do." Trevor ignored the jab, locking eyes with me. "Mr. Carter, you've been spreading malicious lies about me." I folded my hands. "I haven't told a single lie, Trevor. I've been collecting facts." The polished smile twitched before he smoothly pivoted to Emily. Babe, your dad is paranoid and controlling. I can get you out of this toxic environment." Emily stood up, her knees knocking, but her voice ringing clear. "You need to leave right now." Trevor kept the camera pinned on me. "You see this? You're making her terrified of her own shadow." It was a masterclass in gaslighting, performed live. She was already terrified. I rumbled low and steady. Before she ever came home, Trevor planted a foot on the bottom step. "I just want 5 minutes." "No, you have no right to keep her from me." I leaned forward. "Trevor, you can turn around and leave as a free man. Or you can stand here, let every camera roll, and document yourself, ruining your own life." The supreme confidence masking his face cracked. He looked around, Denise watching, Cal grinning, neighbors on their lawns. It wasn't an ambush, it was absolute accountability. "But arrogance is a fatal disease," he laughed harshly. "You think you've outsmarted me, old man?" He took one more step. His boot crossed the threshold of my porch. I stood up slowly, pointing a finger at his chest. "You are now criminally trespassing." He sneered, bringing the phone inches from my face. "Hear that, everyone? This unstable old man is threatening me." Deputy Aaron Pike approached with the heavy, measured stride of the law. Trevor spun around, triumphant. "Deputy!" Perfect timing. I'm being harassed. Aaron stopped at the base of the steps. "I've been here the whole time." "Mr. Malloy, excellent." Trevor turned back to me with malicious joy. "I told you, Ray. Nobody is going to believe you." Slowly, he pulled a second smartphone from his pocket. "You see, Deputy," Trevor boomed for his live stream. "I knew this man was dangerous, so when he called me 2 days ago, I recorded the conversation." Emily gasped. Trevor tapped the screen. "I think you need to hear this, officer." Aaron extended an impassive hand. "Play it." Trevor pressed play. The recording crackled to life with my cold, hard voice. "I'll handle you my way," my recorded voice said. "What does that mean?" Trevor's recorded voice sounded frightened. "You've pushed this far enough," my voice continued. "You won't like what happens next." The clip abruptly ended. Silence slammed down on the porch. Emily looked horrified. Aaron's expression remained unreadable. Trevor spread his arms, basking in his checkmate. "I told you, he's threatening my life. I want to press charges." I didn't move. When a man firmly believes he's won the war, he stops checking his flanks. I looked at Aaron. Then Trevor, "Are you absolutely sure you want to submit that audio as official evidence?" "It speaks for itself, Ray," Trevor sneered. "It certainly does," I agreed. I reached into my shirt pocket and extracted a small silver flash drive. Trevor's smile faltered. "What is that?" "My copy," I said softly. "You see, Trevor, I don't record phone calls, but the high-definition security system mounted directly above my head records all audio within a 40-foot radius. Unedited and strictly time-stamped, I tossed the flash drive to Denise, who opened her laptop on the porch table. Trevor Malloy was about to learn what happens when you bring a knife to a gunfight with a U.S. Marshal. Within seconds, Denise had the unedited security footage loaded on her screen. She hit play. The audio began exactly the same way Trevor's had, my voice, his voice. the same ambient background noise of the neighborhood. But then, right where Trevor's version had abruptly stopped, the true conversation continued. Trevor's voice came through crystal clear, dripping with arrogant amusement. "Come on, old man. Give me something I can use. Tell me what you're really thinking." "I'm thinking you need to leave my property," my recorded voice answered calmly. Trevor laughed on the tape. No, that's boring. Give me some of that boomer rage. Say you'll handle me." A few seconds of silence on the recording, then my voice. "I'll handle you my way." Standing on the porch, Trevor's face went rigid. The color rapidly drained from his cheeks. Because this time, everyone heard the second half of that sentence. "My way means every camera, every police report, and every legal option available to me." The recording of my voice finished. Emily let out a sharp gasp, covering her mouth with both hands. Cal muttered a satisfied, "Well, there it is." Trevor's voice on the recording sounded instantly irritated. "Nobody wants to hear that legal crap." Then, my final sentence played, "You've pushed this far enough." Because Emily deserves to live without looking over her shoulder. Denise paused the audio. The silence that followed was suffocating. The difference was undeniable. Trevor had surgically removed every sentence that provided context, deliberately splicing the audio to fabricate a threat. But I wasn't finished. I hadn't spent 3 decades building airtight federal cases just to leave a loophole. "Back it up 10 seconds, I instructed Denise. "Listen to the background." She rewound the clip. This time, Deputy Pike leaned in closer to the laptop speakers. Right before the edit point in Trevor's fabricated version, the faint sound of my kitchen radio bled into the recording. A weatherman's voice murmured, "Showers moving through Blount County overnight." Then, in the very next second of Trevor's spliced audio, the weather report inexplicably jumped. "Sunny skies expected tomorrow afternoon." Aaron straightened up, his eyes locking onto Trevor. "A live weather broadcast doesn't skip 12 hours in half a second, Mr. Malloy." Cal chuckled darkly. "Weather ain't that fast, son." Nobody else laughed. Aaron's hand rested casually near his radio. "It could have been a different station," Trevor stammered, taking a half step backward. The polished veneer was completely shattered now. He looked like a cornered rat. "It could have been," Aaron agreed coolly, "but let's listen to the very end of the file." Denise clicked play one last time. The phone conversation ended. The sound of a car door slamming echoed through the speakers. And then, captured by the hypersensitive porch microphone, as Trevor walked back to his vehicle, came a whispered mutter. "That should be enough to frame the old bastard." The porch went dead still. Trevor stared at the laptop, his mouth opening and closing like a suffocating fish. "I don't know what that is. That's a deepfake. You manipulated," Aaron said, extending his hand. "You presented tampered evidence to a sworn officer of the law in an attempt to falsely incriminate a citizen." Trevor swallowed hard. "I didn't edit anything." "You really want to take the word of this violent old man?" Before he could continue his desperate spin, headlights washed over the driveway again. A silver SUV pulled up to the curb. Emily's eyes widened in confusion. "I know that car," she whispered. A woman stepped out. It was Linda Matthews, the principal at Emily's high school. She walked up the driveway, clutching a thick manila folder. "I apologize for the intrusion, Deputy," Linda said, nodding respectfully to Aaron. "I was told I might find you here." Aaron tipped his hat. "You have something for me." "Ma'am?" Linda turned her stern gaze onto Trevor. "Mr. Malloy came to our school campus 3 separate times this week, even after Emily explicitly requested he not contact her." Trevor immediately raised his hands. "I was bringing her flowers." To apologize, Linda ignored him completely. "Our security cameras logged his vehicle idling across the street from the faculty parking lot for over an hour last Tuesday. He was stalking her." She handed the folder to Aaron. "I've printed the time-stamped photographs." Emily stared at the photos, her hands trembling. "I never even saw him. You weren't supposed to," I said softly. Trevor looked around wildly. The walls of his meticulously constructed reality were caving in. "This is absurd. This is a coordinated witch hunt." Then a third car rolled to a stop. Marissa Cole stepped out into the harsh glare of the floodlights. She hadn't planned to come. I could tell, by the way she hesitated at the edge of the driveway, her arms wrapped tightly around her chest. But she took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked into the light. Aaron looked surprised. "Miss Cole." "I'd like to make a formal statement, Deputy," Marissa said, her voice shaking but resolute. Trevor actually physically recoiled. He took a full step backward, nearly tripping over the bottom stair. Marissa looked right at him. "You remember me, Trevor?" He forced a sickeningly fake smile. "I think you have me mistaken for someone else." "No," she said, her voice gaining strength with every word. "I made that mistake once. I won't make it again." She turned to Aaron. "He isolated me. He recorded our arguments. He edited the audio to make me sound unstable. He stalked me for months after I left. He is doing the exact same thing to Emily." Aaron pulled a small notebook from his breast pocket, scribbling rapidly. Trevor was hyperventilating now. Everywhere he turned, another piece of his dark history had arrived to confront him. The narrative he thought he owned had violently rebelled. Then, his own smartphone vibrated loudly in his hand. He glanced down at the screen, panic flashing in his eyes. In his desperation to paint me as the aggressor, he had forgotten one crucial detail. His live stream was still broadcasting. Hundreds of comments were scrolling furiously across the screen. Strangers from across the internet had just watched the entire confrontation unfold. They had watched him present fake evidence, watched the unedited truth play out, and watched his victims unite against him. His attempt to ruin my reputation had instantly become a live broadcast of his own destruction. He frantically fumbled with the screen, desperately trying to end the stream. "Too late," I said. Aaron stepped forward, his posture shifting from investigative to authoritative. "Trevor Malloy." Trevor snapped his head up. "Based on the evidence presented tonight, along with sworn witness statements and video documentation, I am placing you under arrest." Aaron unclipped his handcuffs. Charges include criminal trespass, harassment, aggravated stalking, and evidence tampering. Trevor's face went bone white. "You can't be serious. This is a setup. This old man set me up." "No," Aaron said, grabbing Trevor's wrist and swiftly locking the steel cuff into place. "Security cameras don't set people up. They just strip away the lies." Trevor struggled briefly, but Aaron expertly spun him around, clicking the second cuff home. Emily began to cry, not from fear, not from shame. The tears fell because, for the first time in 2 grueling years, she didn't have to wonder if anyone would believe her. She didn't have to defend her own sanity. As Aaron marched Trevor down the driveway toward the cruiser, Trevor threw one last, desperate look over his shoulder at me. The polished facade was completely gone, replaced by pure, unfiltered venom. "This isn't over, Carter," he hissed. I stepped to the edge of the porch, looking down at him. "You're right, Trevor. It's just beginning. The U.S. Marshals taught me how to finish a fight. I promise you, by the time the courts are done with you, you won't even own the shirt on your back." Aaron pushed him into the back of the cruiser and slammed the door shut. The heavy thud sounded like a vault locking forever. The cruiser's taillights flared, and then he was gone, swallowed by the darkness. The silence that returned to the porch wasn't heavy or terrifying. It was the deep, resonant quiet of a storm finally breaking. 3 weeks later, I stood on the Blount County Courthouse steps with a lukewarm coffee in my hand. The morning air was crisp and smelled of fresh-cut grass. Trevor's legal defense had imploded faster than a dying star. Faced with undeniable video evidence, tampered audio files, and multiple corroborating witnesses, his high-priced lawyer had advised him to take a plea deal. He was slapped with a massive restraining order, heavy fines, and a suspended sentence that would send him to prison the second he sneezed in our direction. His reputation in the city was incinerated. Emily stood by, wearing a sharp navy blazer. The haunted look in her eyes had vanished, replaced by a fierce, quiet strength. "It's really over," she said, watching the morning traffic roll past. I smiled. "The legal part is." She wrapped her arms around me, burying her face in my shoulder. "Thank you, Dad, for everything." I hugged her back, resting my chin on top of her head. "You don't owe me any thanks, sweetheart. You survived. You did the hardest part all by yourself." That night, we sat on the porch together. Cal was rambling about the price of spark plugs. Denise was reading a paperback. The world felt ordinary again. I looked up at the bulb glowing above the front door. Margaret had been right. You never know who might need to find their way home in the dark. But sometimes, That light does more than guide your family. Sometimes it serves as a blinding spotlight, exposing the monsters who think they own the night. If you enjoyed this story of a father unleashing hell to protect his daughter, don't let greed or fear trap you in the dark. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let me know in the comments. What would you have done in my shoes? Until next time, stay safe out there.